Welcome to Coffee with Kupke, a production of St. Paul Inside the Walls. Here on Coffee with Kupke, we grab a cup of coffee, at least we're claiming this is coffee. We sit with Monsignor Raymond Kupke, the pastor of St. Anthony's in Hawthorne, professor at Immaculate Conception Seminary, diocesan archivist. We sit with Monsignor Kupke to delve into the history of Catholicism in the Diocese of Paterson. My name is Father Paul Manning. I am the vicar for Evangelization for the Diocese of Paterson. And here I am with Monsignor Kupke. So grab your cup of coffee and let's jump right in. I'm going to take a sip. In our last episode, we were talking about the third Bishop of Newark, right? Number 3, Bishop Wigger.
Winand Wigger.
What's the first name?
Winand
Wigger. That sounds like a comedy skit name. Winand Wigger. Yeah. Anyway, so you have an interesting footnote about the Turner.
Truth is all in the footnotes.
Did you hear that? The truth is all in the footnotes. That's where history is really made, right?
That's right.
So you talk about the Turner. So the Turner is allegedly a secret list of candidates for the episcopacy. Right. So my first question is, if it's secret, how do you know about this, and how is it in a footnote?
Like any good secret, nobody can keep it.
Okay. And are there...
Actually, Monsignor Bob Lister at Seton Hall finally got into this Turner in his research in the Propaganda Fide archives.
So actually, he found the list somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
All through Wigger's 20 years as bishop, there was constant opposition to him on every level. He was one of the most conservative bishops in the United States, sided with the conservative group in the Americanism controversy. Right. So everybody who did not agree with him, including Dean McNulty,
yes,
they would use every means to undercut him, undermine him.
Amazing.
And this was a period when the press was very, very present. You
mentioned that
big cities would have,
so
9,
many,
10 newspapers.
And they would seize any story they could.
That also published 3 times a day. They had a morning edition, an evening edition.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
So there was a lot of space there in the press. So these guys were not above going into the press and condemning Wigger and writing letters to the editor.
Sounds familiar, right? As we talk about the synod, the lead up to the synod and cardinals going public. Yeah.
So among the many complaints about Wigger, we already talked about the fact that the big city pastors of the archdiocese, the diocese rather, of which there were many, they disparaged him because of the whole thing with Orange, that he could not bear
he couldn't
the heat of the day.
Yeah.
He was not. They could not believe that he was made a bishop. They couldn't pay off a little debt like that.
Well, it's funny because in most dioceses, you'll have a succession of bishops. Some of whom are academics, and some of whom are pastoral. Right. And you still hear the same thing today. Well, he doesn't really know enough about.
He's never been in a parish. What does he know?
Yeah, right. and then you hear, well, he's not. He hasn't studied enough. He doesn't know enough. Right. Yeah.
So with Wigger, one of the complaints was that he was a mistake. Imagine this follow you around for 20 years. There were 2 Turners at the same time.
Yeah. So Raymond, maybe just explain what a Turner is.
Turner is a list usually of 3 characters that are submitted to the Pope for a vacancy in a diocese.
And who
that point?
Can you just tell us who submits the names?
Bishops submit to the nuncio names of likely candidates within their diocese who might be episcopal material. Then ultimately the nuncio forwards this to the Congregation for Bishops in Rome, and then ultimately on Saturday morning, the prefect of the dicastery for bishops is really the only one that has a weekly audience with the Pope.
Oh.
Every Saturday morning, and he just comes over with all these lists, and the Pope says,
And
nah. But anyway,
do you think they ever use darts?
I wouldn't be surprised,
Okay.
But in this case, there were 2 New Jersey turners up on the same day, because we have both Newark and Trenton
Are open
the
at the
new
same time.
Diocese of Trenton are open at the same time. So Winand Wigger is nominated as the Bishop of Trenton, and Michael O'Farrell, a priest of the Newark Diocese, is nominated as first Bishop of Trenton.
Newark.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Wait, who's on which list?
Wigger gets the nomination for Newark.
Oh, okay.
And O'Farrell gets the nomination for Trenton.
Got it.
So there was a crew within the diocese for 20 years and insisted that this had been a mistake, that this had been a clerical error in Rome, because the head of the dicastery for bishops was German at this point, and that Wigger should have been appointed to Trenton, which had a larger German population, and O'Farrell should have been appointed to Newark. And the fact that it went the other way around, they insisted that this was a mistake.
That the German head of the dicastery
Had pushed the German guy
for Newark
for the bigger diocese
because it was bigger,
right
and established.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So ultimately, in the mid 20th century, when Monsignor Worcester does
Research,
he finds that indeed, there was a change, that originally they were
switched,
slotted the other way, but that the switch was not. It was because Wigger had a doctorate, he had a broader experience than O'Farrell did, so they gave him the bigger diocese.
Interesting. Wow. So you already mentioned that he, I think, made more use of penalties, suspensions, and trials.
Yes.
I reading this chapter, you quote him every now and then, and he seems kind of testy, and I was amazed at how many times he put priests on trial.
Yes, yeah, something that we haven't seen in our entire career.
Yeah, because they're breaking canon law or something, or they're not obeying the bishop, or
all the above.
Okay.
The group that were out in opposition. It's a little bit like the 8 Republicans in Washington, at the they were as unruly as be damned. Like there was a priest in New York City who was a very popular speaker, but he was also the Americanist,
Yeah.
And Jersey guys would purposely invite him to New Jersey to speak at church dedication because they knew he would annoy Wigger.
Yeah.
It was that kind of
animosity.
Wow. There was a dinner at St. Joseph's in Paterson, and one of the pastors, Sebastian Smith, was called upon to give the toast to the bishop, and he refused in public. He says, I'm not a bishop's fan. Why are you?
Oh man!
It was that kind of a.
That's too bad.
There was nothing quiet about it, and Dean McNulty was one of the most contentious. Wigger did not like going to St. John's in Paterson. He referred to it as a barn.
Right.
He said it was too big, impossible to preach in.
Yeah.
So there was just animosity with these guys left and right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the small groups of ethnics are delighted because Wigger can deal with them in their own language.
Yes, yeah, and in some ways was supportive of them.
Yeah, but one of Wigger's problems, and this will go on now after Wigger for another 20, 25 years, is trying to find adequate priests to cover these new ethnic groups, because very often what is coming over from Europe in terms of clergy are the ones who cannot get along over there, and so they feel that, America is calling me,
Give me
a
your
brand new
tired, you're
opportunity.
poor.
Yes. And so they're coming over here and causing trouble over here. St. Mary's in Passaic is the classic. They went through 5 pastors in 5 years.
Yeah.
One was arrested for shooting a parishioner.
Ooh.
One was arrested for practicing medicine without a license. One ran off to the California Gold Rush. I mean, and bishops are trying to find stable characters to do something with these.
We thought shooting a bird in the Christmas tree was bad, right? Okay, so an interesting Father Orem, O-R-E-M, Father Orem. Right. I just want to mention him because there was a little interesting detail about him.
When the diocese was split, Netcong and Hackettstown were one parish.
Oh, okay.
Under Orem. And they didn't know what to do about this. So for several years after the diocese was split, he continued to serve both places because...
One pastor with 2 bishops.
Yeah. Netcong... at this point is the end of the world.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful letter from the pastor of Netcong, 20 years after this, like 1912 or something like that, begging the bishop to reduce his diocesan assessment from $15 to $10 because
a year.
Yeah, because there's no way he can possibly raise his money in Netcong.
Wow.
So,
this is an aside, but now we have the Archdiocese of Newark. Eventually, down the road, Mars, Sussex, and Passaic counties will become Paterson.
This is actually the first time that, quotes, the Diocese of Paterson is mentioned.
Yeah.
Because Corrigan, as he's leaving Newark to go to New York, and the split is taking place, Corrigan, guesstimates that this will not be the last split for Newark. Yeah. And that sometime down the road,
there'll be another one.
There'll be another split. And he thinks it will be a diocese either of Jersey City or of Paterson.
I think, did we talk about this in another episode, Joe? Does that ring a bell? Yeah, Jersey City and Paterson. Yeah, and I think it was because
of the way the counties were connected by the railroads.
Yeah. Okay. So the aside is, Raymond, if you look at the geography of our current diocese, what is the actual center geographically of our diocese?
Stockholm, probably.
Really? Yeah, I was going to guess Ogdensburg.
Yeah.
So it's funny, Netcong, you said, was the end of the world. Well, we're not even to the middle of the diocese.
Ecclesiastically, it was the end of the world. Yeah. This is a time when there's only 2 priests in Sussex County.
Okay.
Franklin and Newton. So Netcong was the kind of place that you were sent to, and then you spent your career trying to get out of there and get your way back to the center of
civilization.
But interestingly, Bergen County was the same. The Bergen County was not the bedroom community of New York that it is now. The bridges and tunnels had not been built.
Okay.
And Bergen County, part of the reason there were so many religious order parishes in Bergen County is because the diocesan clergy didn't want to go up there.
It was mission territory. Yeah. There's one very touching picture. It captured for me the world that the church was in at this point. You have a picture of the faculty and student body of St. Anthony's in Butler in 1882.
One of my favorite pictures.
And why is that? Give the detail.
Because the pastor, who you have promised me we'll talk about in another episode, this is a Franciscan parish. So Father Francis Koch is the pastor of St. Anthony's in Butler. Mm-hmm. But he was also very often on the road building little mission churches. He was a vice president of the Catholic Church Extension Society.
Okay.
So the children apparently begged, since he could not be there on the day of the school photo, they asked that his horse be brought into the picture.
Do you remember the
So
horse's
if you
name?
look at the picture, you'll see, I think all the way on the right side, you'll see a man with a horse, and that's Father Koch's horse.
Yes, his beloved Katie.
Okay,
Yeah, interesting. So it just demonstrates that the pastor has his own horse. This is still a pretty rural life.
In the seminary, we have a small little course called theological research. So each of the departments, speak for 2 days on how to do research in their field, But you have to grade them in some way. So I give each of them an historic photograph.
Oh,
And ask them to come up with the date of the photograph based on the evidence that is in the photograph.
that's a great exercise.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Like, for example, we have one picture that obviously could not be later than 1922 because there's a statue of the little flower.
Oh.
And she was not canonized until
Yeah.
But the one that always throws them off every single year is this picture of Our Lady of Mercy in Whippany. And in their minds, the only thing in the picture is the little wood frame old church
Right.
and a fence. But the fence is really not a fence. It's the hitching post for the horses.
Oh, yeah. And so what is the year? I don't. And
Yeah,
seminarians.
before automobiles.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I don't want the seminarians to hear this, though. Okay. So the last thing that we're going to talk about before we get into the actual waves of immigration.
which is what you told me that we all talk about.
I know. And I hope it's the last thing we do. In this time of 1880 to 1920, I think we have 3 hospitals make their appearance in the diocese.
Right. St. Joseph's, All Souls in Morristown.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. I was born there.
Yeah. And St. Mary's in Passaic.
Okay. And at some point, you also talk about the Dnieper water cure.
Neep.
The Neep water cure.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Neep water cure, KN.
IEP.
Okay.
It's sad for me to talk about this because
Because you've had it?
No, because this is one of the oldest properties in the diocese, and we've just let it go.
Oh.
This is Denville, St. Clare's Hospital, the Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother.
Yes.
So this property is purchased by the church in the middle of the 19th century and is the original location of what will later become New Jersey Boys Town in Kearney.
Yeah.
After the orphans leave the property, then they develop on the Passaic River there a hydro water cure, the Neep water cure.
Is that the Rockaway?
The Rockaway
Yeah,
River.
the Rockaway River. Yeah.
I don't know all the details of the hydrotherapy, but this was
It sounds so new age.
Yeah, it was a popular thing at the time, and so they developed and out of that developed St. Francis Health Resort.
Yeah. Was that called a sanatorium at some point?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then ultimately St. Clare's Hospital.
Okay. And do you know why it's called Neep?
I presume some gentleman in Germany named Neep developed the
Yeah.
protocols for it.
Okay. So we're going to go back to Paterson now. So I was surprised to read that the origin of Our Lady of Lourdes is German and Dutch
In Belgium.
and Belgian, and Our Lady of Victories is French, right?
Maybe we.
So
Our Lady of Victories, we'll probably get a counterpoint from Monsignor Silva, but Our Lady of Victories is probably the most interesting parish in the whole diocese.
really,
Yeah, it has reinvented itself more times than any place. It starts out as a French-Italian parish.
okay,
So in 1882, a French order of priests, the Fathers of Mercy, are brought in because there are silk workers coming from southern France, from the Lyon area, to start off the silk industry in Paterson. So they start Notre Dame de Victoire, Our Lady of Victories. Eventually, their mandate is broadened to include the Italians that are starting to come in. But Bishop Wigger is not happy with them. He doesn't feel that they're taking care of the Italians enough. So ultimately, it becomes a diocesan parish.
Okay.
But subsequently, then, Our Lady of Victories will become the original home of the first Latino mission in Paterson, Our Lady of Providence.
Oh.
Then the African-American mission, St. Peter Claver. Then in the 1930s, to try and keep it viable, they come up with the St. Jude Novena. Our Lady of Victories is also the gypsy parish of Paterson.
The Romani?
The Romani. There have been several very interesting Romani funerals out of Our Lady of Victories.
Wow.
And if all that wasn't enough, there was a period where it was the university parish for Seton Hall, Paterson.
Oh.
Which basically was right across the street where Passaic County Community College is now.
Okay.
So Our Lady of Victories has had more angles. Geographically, of the territorial parishes in the diocese, it is the smallest.
Okay.
But it's had
Broad reach
out in many, many different directions.
Yeah. A delegation of Black Catholics just from Our Lady of Victories just attended the National Black Congress in July. When we pick up again in our next episode, we are finally going to talk about the immigration waves, and we're going to start with the Italians.
All right.
Let's leave it there. I want all of you who are listening or watching to make sure that you keep an eye out or an ear out for the next episode of Coffee with Kupke. In order to stay on top of new releases, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you are on YouTube, please do drop a like and hit the bell for notifications. While you're at it, make sure to check out the other shows produced by the diocese. Those shows are Beyond the Beacon, hosted by Bishop Kevin Sweeney and Jay Agnish, our Director of Communications, and the Paul Street Journal, hosted by Brian Hansberger and Freddie Garcia. I want to give a special thanks to Joe Ginexi, our sound and visual engineer, Caitlin Ferrari, who's involved in pre- and post-production, and Freddie Garcia, who's helping out with this podcast in addition to doing his own. With all that said, I just want to thank you for joining us in Coffee with Kupke. Keep making Catholic history in the Diocese of Paterson.